Hey, step away from the vehicle. This lot's restricted.
I work here, just loading my gear.
Everyone says that. I'm gonna need ID before this gets ugly.
For putting bags in my own car?
Sir, you don't drive unmarked police SUVs. Don't play dumb.
Julian Moss, Chief of Police.
You're Chief Moss?
And you just racially profiled your...
The parking lot security camera captured everything. Every word, every movement, every assumption Officer Brent Connors should have questioned but didn't. The black man standing beside the unmarked SUV isn't panicking. He isn't sneaking around. He isn't even glancing over his shoulder. He's simply loading gear into the back of a departmental vehicle parked exactly where it's supposed to be, inside the police personnel-only lot. But Officer Connors never saw a police chief. He saw a black man touching a high-end SUV, and he made a decision. He strides into frame with his chest puffed forward, hand already resting on his duty belt, acting like the parking lot belongs to him alone. No hesitation, no verification, no professional distance, just certainty. Dangerous, arrogant certainty. When the man calmly lifts his credentials toward him, credentials that should have ended the entire encounter instantly, Officer Connors laughs, mocks him, calls the ID fake, calls the vehicle impounded, calls the chief of police someone who doesn't belong here. What happens next didn't just end an officer's career. It triggered a $1.20 $2 million settlement, exposed a pattern of racial profiling inside the department, and forced the city to answer for why a tow detail officer felt empowered to detain the chief of police on his own property. But what made this rookie believe he could illegally tow a chief's unmarked SUV? And how did his own body cam become the evidence that destroyed him? Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be heard. Your support brings more truth to light. Detroit, Michigan. The Central District Police Headquarters Parking Facility, Level 1, Section C. A restricted access lot reserved exclusively for command staff, detectives, and authorized department vehicles. Entry requires key card access. Signage posted every 30 feet. Police personnel only. Unauthorized vehicles subject to tow. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday in October. The lot was moderately occupied. Patrol vehicles, unmarked sedans, personal cars belonging to officers working afternoon shift. Security cameras mounted on light poles captured fixed angles of the entire space, recording continuously the servers maintained by Internal Affairs. Chief Julian Moss had been appointed Chief of Police for Detroit's Central District exactly 3 weeks earlier. At 48 years old, he was a 26-year veteran of law enforcement who'd risen through patrol, detective bureau, and command positions to reach the department's third highest ranking. His appointment had been celebrated by community leaders and civil rights organizations. A black chief in a district with significant African-American population was seen as long overdue representation. That afternoon, Moss was loading tactical equipment into his departmental SUV, a black Chevrolet Tahoe with concealed emergency lights, government plates, and Central District Command insignia on the registration. He'd spent the morning in administrative meetings and was preparing for evening community outreach. His trunk was open, his suit jacket hung on the door handle, his shirt sleeves rolled up as he organized a duffel bag containing duty gear, binders with policy documents, and a tactical vest required for high-risk call responses. His movements were unhurried, routine, unremarkable. He wasn't concealing anything, wasn't acting furtively, wasn't doing anything that would draw attention from anyone operating with basic observational skills and professional judgment. But Officer Brent Connors wasn't operating with either. Connors was 27 years old, 2 years with Detroit PD, currently assigned to parking enforcement and tow coordination, a position typically reserved for officers who demonstrated poor field performance or required supervised duty while under performance review. His personnel file contained 4 complaints in 2 years, all involving confrontational encounters during parking enforcement. Supervisors had noted, Officer Connors demonstrates aggressive approach to minor violations, needs improvement in professional demeanor and conflict de-escalation. Those deficiencies were about to destroy his career. Connors pulled his tow detail patrol truck into the restricted lot he had access for enforcement purposes and immediately spotted Moss at the SUV. The security footage shows Connors' body language from the moment he exited his vehicle. Chest forward, shoulders squared, stride purposeful and aggressive. No pause to assess, no verification of whether this person might be authorized, just immediate assumption of wrongdoing. The footage captured Connors' approach and his first words delivered with hostile authority. "Step away from the vehicle. This is a restricted lot." Moss looked up, his expression showing mild surprise but no alarm. He was accustomed to being recognized. Most officers knew the command staff by sight, especially newly appointed chiefs. "Officer, I work here. I'm loading my gear." Connor stepped closer, his hand moving to his belt. "I don't know you, and you don't look like you work here." The racial coding in that statement was unmistakable. "Don't look like" was profiling disguised as security protocol. Moss's expression shifted slightly, recognition that this was a routine verification, but something else. "I'm Chief Moss, Central District Command. This is my assigned vehicle." Connors laughed. Actually laughed. The sound captured clearly on the security audio. "Sure you are. Your kind don't drive unmarked police SUVs." The mask had dropped completely. Your kind wasn't ambiguous. It was explicit racial bias from an officer who decided that a black man loading an SUV in a police lot couldn't possibly belong there. Moss maintained his composure, the result of decades navigating law enforcement while black, understanding that responding with justified anger would only be weaponized against him. His voice remained measured, professional. "Officer, I'm going to show you my credentials. I suggest you look at them carefully before this goes any further." Connors' hand moved toward his service weapon. "Don't reach for anything. I need to see ID before this gets ugly. My identification is in my jacket pocket on the door. I'm telling you I'm Chief Julian Moss, and you're creating a situation you don't want. Everyone says they work here." Connors' voice dripped with contempt. "You people are always claiming connections." Moss reached slowly for his jacket, moving with deliberate care to avoid any action Connors could misinterpret. He pulled his credential wallet from the interior pocket and held it open at eye level, 2 feet from Connors' face. The security footage captured credentials clearly. Gold Chief's badge, official ID card with Moss's photo, name, rank, and department seal, Julian Moss, Chief of Police, Central District Command, Uniform Division. Connor squinted theatrically, his voice mocking. "Those look fake. You can buy badges online. Anyone can print an ID card." Moss's jaw tightened, the first visible sign of his patience eroding. "Officer, these are official department credentials. My badge number is registered with the commissioner's office. The SUV's plate is department issued. You can verify all of this with one radio call." "I don't need to verify anything. I can see what I'm seeing. You loading a high-end vehicle in a restricted lot with fake credentials." The security footage shows Moss taking a controlled breath, clearly calculating his next move. He could order Connors to stand down. He technically outranked every officer in the district, but doing so would likely trigger defensive escalation, so he tried reason instead. "Officer, I'm asking you professionally. Call your supervisor. Call dispatch. Call anyone who can verify my identity. This doesn't need to become an incident." Connors pulled his radio. "Dispatch, this is Tow 7. I've got an unauthorized civilian in Personnel Lot, Section C. Subject claims to be command staff, but credentials appear fraudulent. Requesting verification and tow authorization for Black Tahoe government plates." The dispatcher's response came through clearly. "Unit 7, can you provide plate number for verification?" Connors read the plate number. There was a pause longer than typical. Then the dispatcher returned. "Unit 7, that vehicle is registered to Central District Command. Can you confirm the individual's name?" Subject claims to be Chief Moss. Another pause. The security footage shows Moss's expression. Not satisfaction, but weary recognition that even dispatch confirmation might not penetrate Connors' certainty. "Unit 7. Chief Moss was appointed 3 weeks ago. If the individual has matching credentials, that vehicle is his assigned unit." Connors' face showed no recognition of error, just defensive anger. "Dispatch, credentials appear counterfeit. I'm maintaining my position." Moss's voice carried edge now. "Officer, you just received confirmation. Release my vehicle and step back." If the officer had just radioed the watch commander, do you think this stop would have ended right here? Connors activated his body cam late, after the encounter had already escalated, finally creating secondary video documentation. The footage shows tight framing, Moss's face showing controlled irritation. The credentials still held visibly, the SUV's open trunk with clearly organized gear. "I'm calling a tow for this vehicle." Connors' voice had risen, defensive and aggressive. "You can sort this out with detectives." A second officer approached, Officer Tyrell Gibson, another tow detail employee who had been working the adjacent lot. He'd heard the radio traffic and walked over to assess. His expression changed the moment he saw Moss. "Sir, Chief Moss." Moss nodded once, his voice tight. "Yes." Gibson's eyes widened, his head swiving toward Connors with obvious alarm. "Connors, did you verify his ID?" Connors gestured dismissively. "It's fake. Obviously fake." Gibson stared at him like he'd announced he could fly. "That's not fake. That's the actual chief, the new district commander." The body cam captured Connors' face perfectly, the moment realization began penetrating his certainty. But instead of immediate apology and retreat, ego forced him to justify. "How was I supposed to know?" "He doesn't." Gibson cut him off sharply. "You were supposed to verify. You were supposed to call it properly. You were supposed to not assume." Moss spoke, his voice carrying command authority for the first time. "Officer Connors, you racially profile me. You attempted to tow my department-issued vehicle from a lot I'm authorized to use. You ignored my credentials. You dismissed dispatcher confirmation. And you did all of this based on assumption rooted in racial bias." "Sir, I was just—" Moss's voice was absolute. "Don't speak to me further. Officer Gibson, secure the scene. I want his body cam footage preserved. I want the security footage from this lot secured, and I want his supervisor here immediately." Gibson pulled his radio, his voice professional but urgent. "Dispatch. Need immediate supervisor response to Personnel Lot Section C. Chief Moss requests watch commander presence for incident documentation." Connor stood frozen, the body cam capturing his face, cycling through emotions, denial, fear, desperate calculation about how to minimize what had just happened. But there was no minimizing it. Every second was documented, every word preserved, every assumption exposed. Within 8 minutes, the personnel-only lot had transformed into an administrative crime scene. Watch Commander Lieutenant Sander Fleming arrived, assessed the situation with grim professionalism, and immediately separated the involved parties. Connors was directed to return to his patrol truck and wait. Moss was asked to provide statement. The body cam footage, Connors's and Gibson's, was immediately preserved. Security footage from 3 camera angles was pulled and locked under internal affairs protocols. Fleming called her captain, who called the deputy chief, who called the police commissioner. Within 30 minutes, every supervisor in the chain of command understood they were facing catastrophic liability. Because this wasn't routine misconduct. This was an officer racially profiling the chief of police on department property. Connor sat his patrol truck, body cam still recording his face. The footage shows him attempting to craft justifications, practicing phrases, rehearsing explanations, trying to build a narrative that didn't involve admitting racist assumption. But every angle of video evidence contradicted whatever story he might tell. Inside headquarters, Moss provided a detailed statement to internal affairs investigators. At approximately 2:15 p.m., I was loading equipment into my assigned vehicle when Officer Connors approached aggressively. He immediately questioned my presence despite this being a restricted lot I'm authorized to access. When I identified myself and showed credentials, he called them fake. When dispatcher confirmed vehicle registration, he dismissed it. Throughout the encounter, he made statements indicating racial bias, including, "Your kind don't drive unmarked police SUVs, and you people are always claiming connections." His conduct violated department policy on profiling, failed to verify credentials despite clear identification, ignored dispatcher confirmation of vehicle registration, threatened to tow a command staff vehicle without authorization, demonstrated disrespect toward a superior officer, and created department liability through bias-motivated action. Connors was placed on immediate administrative leave. His badge and service weapon were confiscated. His access to department facilities was revoked, and Internal Affairs recommended termination with cause. But the consequences extended beyond individual accountability. Because if an officer felt empowered to profile and threaten the chief of police, What was happening to ordinary citizens who lacked badges, rank, and institutional power? If an officer can profile the chief of police, what chance do regular citizens have? The termination hearing was held 3 weeks after the incident. Connors appeared with union representation, but the evidence was indefensible. Video from 3 angles showing every moment, audio capturing every word, dispatch recordings proving he'd ignored confirmation, and Moss's testimony measured, factual, devastating. The termination decision was unanimous. Officer Brent Connors was fired from Detroit Police Department effective immediately. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His name entered national decertification databases. But Moss wasn't satisfied with individual punishment because Connors' behavior reflected systemic problems, training failures, cultural tolerance of bias, and lack of accountability that had allowed him to reach 2 years of service despite 4 prior complaints. Moss filed a personal civil rights lawsuit citing racial discrimination, violation of his civil rights as both citizen and law enforcement official, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and department negligence in supervising an officer with documented bias issues. The city's legal team evaluated the case and faced uncomfortable reality. Defending this would require arguing that profiling the chief of police was reasonable. No jury would accept that. No judge would find it defensible. Settlement negotiations began immediately. The city's initial offer, $400,000 plus policy reforms, was rejected. Moss demanded accountability that went beyond money. The final settlement, $1.2 million paid to Chief Julian Moss for civil rights violations and emotional distress. Permanent prohibition on Brent Connors from any law enforcement employment in Michigan. Implementation of mandatory verification protocols requiring ID checks before enforcement action, regardless of appearance assumptions. Enhanced anti-profiling training for all parking enforcement officers. Quarterly audits of tow detail encounters to identify pattern bias. Creation of an independent review panel to investigate profiling complaints. Public acknowledgement from the mayor and commissioner of systemic failure. The settlement press conference was held at police headquarters. Moss stood at the podium in full uniform and delivered a statement that transcended personal grievance. Officer Connors saw me loading my vehicle and made immediate assumptions based on my race. He didn't see a chief. He didn't see a colleague. He saw a black man he assumed didn't belong. When I showed credentials, he called them fake. When dispatch confirmed registration, he ignored it. Why? Because his bias was stronger than evidence. If he treated me this way, someone with rank, authority, institutional protection, imagine how he treats people with no badge, no title, no power. This settlement acknowledges my harm. But real justice requires asking why an officer felt empowered to profile his own chief, and what that reveals about how the department treats ordinary black citizens every day. The $1.20 $2 million made headlines. The termination delivered individual accountability. The reforms provided structural response. But the deeper question remained. How many other officers operated with Connors' assumptions? How many citizens had been profiled without video evidence? How many complaints have been dismissed because victims lacked Moss's position and resources? Moss continued serving as chief of police, his authority reinforced rather than diminished by his willingness to demand accountability. He implemented sweeping reforms in Central District, including bias training, community oversight, and transparent complaint processes. Connors disappeared from public view. His law enforcement career ended at 27. His name forever associated with profiling his own chief over an SUV he was legally authorized to use. The security camera that captured everything became permanent record documentation that even chiefs aren't immune to racial profiling, and evidence that accountability, though rare, is possible when victims have power to demand it. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light.